Hi, so I'm going to just talk you through today how I make my bubble scoops. There's lots and lots of different free recipes you can look at on the internet, and they all have a sort of bicarb base generally, but you can add various different things. So clays, maybe if you want them to be a bit more nourishing. You can use different oils if you've got a particular one, as they all have different properties that are good for the skin. I'm using some cocoa butter in mine today because I like that, super moisturising. So I'm just going to talk you through what I add together, and in particular the dyes that I use to get the really vibrant colours in the bubble scoops, because that's quite a big seller for me. Okay, so basically what I do, I've got my dry ingredients in here, my oils, fragrance and the cocoa butter that I'm going to mix all up together in one. These bubble scoops that I'm making are a tricolour, so I've got 3 little pots here of dye that I've measured out using my super accurate jewellery scale, and it is super accurate because the amounts that you're using, so I have 0.2 grams in each of these, which is obviously too small for a normal scale. This one is just a little jewellery scale. You can buy them on Amazon, they're not expensive, and it will measure in the quantities that you need, so it's really important that you get something that's accurate enough. I'll just show you what the dyes look like in the little pots. So these are water solubles. What that means is they will, when you put them in the bath, activate and they will dye the bath water. They won't cling to the bath itself, they'll bind with the water because I've added some polysorbate in my mix here. So this is what they look like in the packet, just a little powder. They don't necessarily look like the colour that they're going to be, which is why I always put them in colour-coded bowls, so then you know what colour you're working with. You can use other dyes, not just water soluble. So here I've got some non-bleeds, which again will give a really nice vibrant colour in the bubble scoop, but they won't dye the water. Or mica, which I find they're nicer for a more subtle colour. You'd have to use a lot more of a mica to get the vibrancy, and also they can leave a bit of residue in the bath, which I don't like, so I tend to steer away from these. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of warm water to each of these dyes. What that does, it will help to just dissolve them so that they are easier to mix through, because you can add them as a powder, but you will have to mix and mix and mix and mix, and it will take absolutely forever. You'll end up with arm muscles that are gigantic. So this is a bit of a cheat really. I'm using warm water in here because the dyes that I use, I get mine from Stoke Rochford, and they are fine with warm water. It doesn't damage the dye in any way. Other ones you have to be a little bit careful because they're not so heat tolerant. You see, I'm just going to give it a little swirl around. We want to just give it a mix until all the lumps are gone, because if you put it in your mixture here with lumps in it, you're going to get funny colour spots, and then it might end up dyeing somebody in the bath, which is obviously not what we want to be doing. I'd say the pink and the blue in particular, these are the hardest colours to mix in as a dry powder. So I absolutely always give these a bit of a stir in first and make sure they're fully dissolved. Okay, so I don't know if you can see in here, I've still got a couple of little lumps. What I'm going to do, just work that around, a little bit of a mix in, make sure they're all dissolved, because that will actually save me a ton of mixing time later on. Now you can use a stand mixer to do this, which does save your arms a lot, but actually, to be honest, I find it a bit of a faff. By the time you've set everything up, put all your bits and bobs on, scraped the bowl and cleared it all down again, I could have probably done it by hand anyway. So I'm more than happy with the hand mix. I'm only doing a small batch today, so this is a 500 gram batch, so I would use 0.2 grams of dye of each dye. So I've got 0.2, 0.2, 0.1, just to maintain my colour balance, because what you also need to think about with the water solubles is when they get in the bath, what colour are they going to be when they mix together? So blue and pink are fine, really make a nice colour mix together. If you add too much of the yellow, it starts to go a bit of a horrible browny sludge colour, which again is not really what you want. Okay, so these look fine now. I'll just pop them over to one side for a minute. So what we're going to do, we will mix our wet and dry. Let's get this scrape out. And we're going to mix it all in one sort of plain coloured batch first. And when it's all mixed up, what we can do is just divide it into 3. A bit of a time save there. I mean, you could make 3 different coloured batches, but you would have to work super quick, because once you've mixed it up, it does start to sort of harden and go off. So you need to not really hang around too much once you've got all your ingredients together. Okay, so I'm just going to start by lightly folding it all in. Now, one thing I would recommend, I haven't got mine on today because I'm talking, but is to get yourself a good face mask, because this can be a bit powdery, and before it's bound together, you don't really want that getting in your lungs, especially if you're not using it all the time. The same with the dyes, because they come in sort of a powder format. You don't really want to be breathing that in if you're making a lot of these. Right, you might be able to see in here just a couple of little specks of colour. Obviously I had a little bit of powder on my gloves still when I was mixing, and honestly they're so strong, these dyes. Sometimes just picking up the packet, and there's a bit on the outside of the packet, it will dye your hands. So the other important thing is to wear gloves, otherwise you are going to end up with some very multicoloured fingers, which is not really a good look. I've done it before when you've had a hole in your glove, you don't notice, and suddenly look down and realise you've got a blue thumb for the rest of the day. It does come off if you do dye yourself, because obviously it's water soluble. You just need to have a good shower and scrub it, but it does last a little while. Right, you can see here it's all starting to bind together now. It goes into a sort of Play-Doh-ish consistency almost, I would say, like a dough, which is exactly how you want it to be. If it's too wet or too dry, if it's too dry, it tends to break your ice cream scoop, I've worked out over time. It needs to be sort of soft enough that your ice cream scoop can plough through it. If it's too hard, the scoop will just break and get stuck. If it's too soft, obviously it will be a bit runny, and it won't hold its shape very well once you've moulded it. You can pipe this if you have a softer recipe, which is also great fun. It looks sort of great on top of bath bombs and stuff. Right, I think we're there. Come together in a nice solid lump. I can tell it's the right sort of consistency because it's not really sticking on the bowl. You can pick it up and it's all keeping together. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split into 3. Got my bowls here. I'm going to do a slightly smaller portion for yellow. I don't want so much of that. Just again for the colour balance. And I've got my pink and my blue. Right, so leave these 2 out there. Start with pink. I'm going to tip my dye in. Also then what I do is take a little bit of the mix and give it a wipe around the bowl, because you do get a fair bit of residue on these, and obviously because you're dealing with such small amounts of colour, if you're leaving half of that in the bowl, it's going to have quite a big impact on your finished product. So you can see where I've added the water, it's instantly turned it from that sort of black powder into this lovely, super vibrant pink. It's a really nice strong colour, this one. It's my favourite actually, the Indian pink. And all I'm going to do is just work that through. So you want to make sure that you can't see any white streaks in your mix here, and that you pick up all the colour from the edge of the bowl. I'll give it a bit of a sort of twisting action as well, and kneading it, just to make sure you're getting all that colour straight through. Again, you can see it's not really sticking in the bowl. Oh, holding my glove. Right, let me change that, otherwise I'm going to have a pink thumb. There we go. So you just want to make sure there's no colour spots in there. Looks like a nice even colour throughout. Right, because I'm changing colours anyway, I would change my gloves whole or not. Here we go, just for example. That's how quickly you can go pink. Right, I'll move pink out the way. So next up is blue. And same thing again. Just going to give it a really good mix. Knead all the dye through. I'll speed this bit up so you don't have to watch it in slow motion. Okay, so here we are. I've got my 3 colours all mixed up nicely. Just going to get my board out. What I've got on there is just a piece of grease-proof paper, so that when I turn out my bubble scoops, they're not going to stick and get stuck. Okay, in place. Now I have got one of these scoops. You see, with the action like this, it just spins around across the bottom, and that's what will give you the nice textured slide across your bubble scoop. There are different types of scoop. This one only goes halfway. So again, if you were looking for just a different style, I guess. Sometimes I do these if I'm doing a lot of glitter on the back, and then it's like a nice smooth glitty area and then some texture as well. So just personal preference. Now, because I'm making mine to sell, I'm just going to make sure that weight-wise they're okay. So I'm actually going to weigh them as I fill my scoop, just to double check that there's not anything going under or over. Right, so then all I do is I'm going to take a little pinch from each colour. I'm going to put them together like this. So if you want it to be much more swirly and patterned, you could take lots of little bits and mix it up more. If you want it to be more sort of defined areas of colour, you just take 3 sort of chunks and squish them together. And the important thing is, though, that you do give them a good squish, otherwise they'll get cracks in them where it's not properly joined and it just doesn't look as nice. Okay, so I'm just going to squish mine down and give it a little knead to that. I'll just check the weight on here. Okay, fine. And I take my scoop, hold it over. Sometimes you need a little bit of help to get it out. This is quite a wet mix, so it's sticking slightly. Okay, just neaten up my edges. Take any sort of excess bits that you don't want off. I prefer them a bit smoother. That excess you can just pop back in your tub, because then you can just reuse that in the next scoop. So actually there's not a lot of waste when you're making this product. Leave it on there, okay? So let's put the texture all around the top. I'm just going to smooth this edge so it didn't come out cleanly. Okay, and then really just work our way through then. Make this one a bit more mixed up. Can you see that's full of more little bits? You don't want to smush it too much because it'll just end up as a sort of brown mess if you blend your colours too much. Make sure you give it a really good squash into the scoop. Then I neaten up the edges. I know some people just leave the edges and they have it more of a sort of like overflowing technique. That's again personal preference, whichever you prefer. Ooh. Got there in the end. So can you see this one? Slightly different because we mix the colours a bit more. Over time as well, because these are water soluble, the colours will slightly bleed into each other. So actually you can already see a little bit here where the yellow and blue are next to each other. It's making a sort of green, which is quite nice as well, because you'll get a purpley colour as well where the pink and blue mix. So I'm going to leave that one a little bit more sort of rough. You can see different examples of styles that you can do them. Let's put this one in here. So basically we'll just make our way through until we've used up underweight, and so we've used up all our mix. So here we have our finished scoops. They look lovely, don't they? Look at the colours, I love them. So what we'll do, we'll just leave them now because they need to set. And that can take anything from 24 to 36 hours, depending on how humid it is when you've made them. So I just pop them away. I've got a drying area where I keep my things. When they're set, they won't always go completely firm. They might have a little bit of squidge left in them, but that's fine. You just want them sort of hard enough and dry enough. Otherwise, there can be some colour transfer if you handle them when they're still wet. Okay, and yeah, I think they look great. Let me know in the comments if there's any other videos you'd like to see. I can show you different things as well that we can do with this same product, because you can mould it in cutters, shape it to make bubble ones. So I can do some other videos about that too if you're interested. Okay, great. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.